Imagine an incredibly wealthy kingdom, right?
Right.
And the monarch suddenly passes away.
Right.
And immediately all eyes turn to the heirs, factions start forming in the corridors, whispers are echoing through the halls, and everyone is maneuvering to see who's actually going to wear the crown.
It's classic succession drama.
Exactly. But the kingdom we're talking about today isn't some, medieval dynasty. We're talking about modern-day Christian television.
Which is a massive empire all on its own.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. Today's topic is the silent succession crisis at Daystar Television Network. And our mission here is to bypass all the noisy public family drama you might have seen and just look straight at the actual mechanics of power, the financial control, and really the ultimate accountability test facing this massive donor-funded empire.
And the sheer scale of the situation is just staggering. I mean, Daystar reaches hundreds of millions of homes globally.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, globally. And when you operate at that level, the lines between a royal bloodline and a corporate organizational chart, well, they usually have to be strictly defined.
Right, for legal reasons alone.
Exactly. But in this landscape, those lines haven't just blurred, they have completely dissolved. We're looking at a scenario where institutional stewardship, governance, and, billions of dollars in potential future revenue are just entirely entangled with this profound personal grief and a highly public family fracture.
So to understand who actually holds the keys to this massive machine today, we have to trace the architecture of the collapse, right? Like, how did this leadership structure completely cave in over the last 4.5 years?
Right, and it starts with the foundational design of the network itself.
Because Daystar wasn't simply run by a family. It was engineered as a literal family enterprise from the ground up.
Exactly. I mean, Marcus and Joni Lamb built this network, and as it grew into this global empire, their family became completely integrated into the daily operations. They had 3 children, Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca.
Which, that alone is standard for a family-founded organization. Suddenly
Sure, completely normal. But the structural anomaly here is how deep the family tree rooted itself into the actual payroll. Because all 3 of those children, along with their respective spouses, were drawing donor-funded salaries simultaneously.
Wait, all of them? At the same time?
All of them. 6 immediate family members.
Wow. Let's actually look at the mechanics of that for you listening to get a clear picture. You have Jonathan Lamb serving as vice president alongside his wife, Susie.
Right.
Then you have Rachel Lamb Brown holding the title of Director of Communications, while her husband, Joshua Brown, is acting as the Director of Business Development.
Yes.
And then you add Rebecca Lamb Weiss as a producer and on-air contributor, and she's married to Jonathan J.W. Weiss, who is the Director of Information Technology.
So when you map that out on a whiteboard, you're not looking at an organizational chart.
No, it's a family tree.
It is a corporate monarchy. You have members dominating the executive, technological, and communicative arteries of the entire network.
Yeah.
And the inherent danger of this design is that any internal family stress instantly becomes a structural crisis for the institution itself.
Because there are no independent shock absorbers.
Exactly. There's no buffer.
Which brings us to the first massive stress test, right?
Sure.
November 30th, 2021. The founder, Marcus Lamb, passes away at the age of 64 from C19.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the entire gravitational pull of this global network falls onto the shoulders of his wife, Joni Lamb. The patriarch is gone, and the structural integrity of that corporate monarchy is just instantly put under immense pressure.
And, the loss of a visionary founder is always going to trigger organizational turbulence anywhere.
Of course.
But because the board and the executive suite were essentially the dining room table, the pressure over the next few years wasn't just about business strategy, it was deeply personal. And this tension just compounded silently until November 2024, when the internal friction finally triggered a massive public explosion.
This is the Jonathan situation.
Yeah. Jonathan Lamb, who was the vice president and basically the heir apparent, was put on a personal improvement plan, demoted, and eventually fired from the network that his parents built.
Fired from the family empire. And the fallout from that firing didn't stay in the boardroom. Because Jonathan's wife, Susie, she went public with severe allegations.
Wait, really severe.
Claiming that Johnny Lamb had covered up the assault of Jonathan and Susie's 5-year-old daughter. But, the toothpaste was out of the tube at that point. The family war was suddenly playing out on the internet, and the damage to the network's public perception was just instantaneous.
And the operational chaos that followed is just a textbook example of what happens when governance completely fails.
Right.
Because of this highly publicized fracturing, 18 different ministries actually pulled their programming from the Daystar network.
Okay, I want to pause on that detail for a second, because for you listening to a casual observer, 18 ministries leaving might just sound like bad PR. One that instantly transformed this bitter family feud into a global succession crisis.
Yeah, and that happened on May 7th, 2026. Joni Lamb passed away at the age of 65 at her home in Bedford, Texas. She succumbed to health complications that were worsened by a back injury.
It's just tragedy after tragedy.
It really is. And the specific details surrounding her final hours tell us almost everything we need to know about the internal power dynamics operating at Daystar at that exact moment.
So for you listening, I want you to think about this for a second. Put yourself in that room. You have Rachel Lamb Brown, the loyal daughter, sitting right there at her mother's bedside during those final moments.
Yeah.
It is a profoundly human, devastating experience.
Unbreaking.
Right. But then consider Jonathan Lamb, the banished son. He isn't called to the house. He isn't told his mother is actively dying.
No.
He actually finds out that Joni has passed away from a phone call with Tom Callender, the Daystar attorney. So I have to ask, what does it mean when the banished son hears from a lawyer while the loyal daughter is at the bedside?
Well, that detail, it demonstrates exactly how information and authority are flowing.
Yeah.
In this structure, the bedside and the boardroom have completely merged into the exact same space. The people with physical access to the founder in her final days are the ones holding the levers of corporate power the next morning.
And there is a highly documented, really agonizing detail here that complicates everything, right? Because multiple watchdog reports indicate that Joni's final wish in her last days was for Jonathan to be restored to Daystar leadership, assuming some form of reconciliation could be achieved, of course.
Right. But Tom Callender, acting as the attorney, has forcefully pushed back on that narrative.
Of course he has.
But the friction between a founder's reported dying wish for family reconciliation and the legal machinery moving in the exact opposite direction, it's incredibly telling.
Right, it shows who's really driving.
Exactly. It shows that the institutional momentum had already surpassed Joni's personal desires. The organization was moving on without him, regardless of what the founder actually wanted.
And that power vacuum naturally pulls our attention to the people who are actually running the machinery right now. Because while the public was fixated on Jonathan's exile or the attorney's statements or all the messy controversies, there was a power couple quietly operating in the shadows.
Yes, there was.
They managed to stay completely out of the scandalous headlines while just consolidating this immense operational control.
We're talking about Rachel Lamb Brown and her husband, Joshua Brown. So Rachel was at the bedside. She is the director of communications. Joshua is the director of business development.
Right.
And in the context of a massive media organization, these are not just, honorary titles.
Yeah.
They are the twin engines of the entire enterprise. Rachel controls the public face, so the PR, the messaging, the external perception of the network. And Joshua controls the financial future, the strategic partnerships, the revenue streams, all the corporate relationships that literally keep the massive broadcast towers powered.
Okay, let me push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people listening might hear this and think, well, what is the problem here?
Sure.
Like, if I start a successful plumbing business or a tech startup and I build it from scratch, of course I'm going to put my son-in-law in charge of the books if I trust him.
Right.
Families run businesses together all the time.
Yeah.
So why is Joshua Brown holding the massive red flag?
It's a great question, but you are describing a privately owned for-profit company.
Okay.
If you own a private tech startup, your only obligation is to yourself and your shareholder. Hire whoever you want, and if the business fails, well, it's your money on the line. But Daystar is a 501c, tax-exempt, donor-funded public ministry.
So it's a charity.
It is legally classified as a charity. The money does not belong to the Lamb family. It belongs to the public mission, and it's funded by donations from everyday believers who trust the institution. In a nonprofit, the board of directors is legally required to act as an independent fiduciary.
Right.
Their whole job is to ensure that no single individual, family, or married couple has unchecked control over the organization's assets. So when you have one spouse controlling the public narrative and the other spouse managing the financial partnerships, you have created a massive unchecked concentration of power. And we know from financial records reviewed by watchdogs that back in 2022, Joshua Brown was earning a $100,000 a year salary in this role.
100,000.
Yeah. He has been this invisible, constant presence through all the turbulence. I mean, ministries leave, Jonathan gets fired, scandals break, and Joshua just remains quietly in control of the revenue.
And that brings us to the upcoming succession decision, which is arguably the most critical moment in Daystar's history. Understanding Rachel and Joshua's current grip on both the message and the money makes the board's next move incredibly high stakes.
Definitely.
I mean, where does a multi-million-dollar global network go when both founders are gone and the heir apparent has been banished?
Well, like religious nonprofits, people like Barry Bowen at the Trinity Foundation, they've mapped out 3 potential succession scenarios.
Okay, what are they?
Option 1 is keeping it in the family, which specifically points to Rachel Lamb Brown. Option 2 is elevating a current insider, so someone like Chief Financial Officer Arnold Torres. And option 3 is launching an external search for a completely new CEO to come in and overhaul the culture.
Option 1 seems like the path of least resistance for an organization that instinctively closes ranks.
Very likely, yeah.
But let's look at the mechanics of that. If Rachel Lamb Brown becomes the CEO or president of Daystar, Joshua Brown doesn't just remain the director of business development.
Yeah.
He becomes the husband of the chief executive.
Exactly. The power dynamic shifts entirely. You have a scenario where the person managing the revenue, the airtime contracts, and the corporate partnerships goes home every night to the person running the entire network.
Brienne.
Any internal checks and balances regarding financial strategy or vendor relationships effectively just vanish.
And this tension forces us to look at the balance between compassion and accountability. Because we have to acknowledge the staggering human toll here.
Absolutely.
Rachel lost her father in 2021. She lost her mother in 2026. Burying both parents in a 5-year span is a crushing weight for anyone.
It's unimaginable.
And furthermore, there are no public accusations of wrongdoing against her. She kept her head down, managed her communications role, and stayed out of all the public attacks against her brother.
And she absolutely deserves pastoral care and the space to grieve. No one is denying that.
Right.
The danger arises when an organization uses personal tragedy as a shield against corporate transparency. Compassion for a grieving daughter just does not remove the legal and ethical demand for institutional accountability.
Because it's still a charity.
Right. We are dealing with a global charity that continuously solicits donations. You can care deeply for a person's soul while still demanding that their public institution answers fundamental governance questions.
And right now, Daystar is failing those transparency tests across the board, like the board of directors. Completely anonymous to the public.
Oh, it's wild.
Wait, how does a nonprofit board even remain anonymous?
Well, because of specific IRS exemptions granted to religious organizations, they actually don't have to file the standard Form 990 public disclosures that other secular charities do.
Oh.
Yeah. It creates a total black box. Watchdogs basically have to piece together financial data from property records, internal leaks, and whistleblowers.
So this lack of disclosure means the public has no idea who is actually making these massive succession decisions. The governance structure going forward is completely unexplained.
Unexplained.
And crucially, the network has released absolutely zero public conflict of interest policies regarding how Rachel and Joshua Brown's overlapping roles are managed.
None.
So without a conflict of interest policy, I mean, for you listening, picture this. If Rachel and Joshua take over, they basically have both the steering wheel and the gas pedal to a massive semi-truck fueled entirely by donor money.
Yep.
While an anonymous board of directors is just fast asleep in the trailer.
That visual captures the operational risk perfectly.
Yeah.
But, for the Daystar audience, this isn't just a corporate oversight issue. It strikes at the core of their theological worldview.
Right, because of the biblical mandates.
Exactly. The network's foundational texts explicitly address this stuff. 1 Timothy chapter 3 outlines the qualifications for leadership, requiring a leader to manage their own house well.
Yeah.
The text literally asks, if someone doesn't know how to rule their own house, how will they take care of the church?
And you pair that with the principle from Luke 16.10, right?
Yeah.
Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. Transparency in the small administrative things reveals character for the massive things.
Precisely.
So when a broadcasting network presents itself as a spiritual vessel, and they're constantly asking for sacrificial donations, yet they refuse to answer basic questions about who sits on the board or what financial guardrails exist for family members, it transcends a governance problem.
It becomes a profound crisis of stewardship.
Yes.
The operational standard for a Christian institution is supposed to be radically higher than the secular corporate world, not hidden behind religious tax exemptions.
Right.
Silence from an anonymous board doesn't project stability to donors. It just breeds speculation. And it actively erodes the foundation of trust that the entire network relies on to exist.
And the clock is ticking on that trust.
Yeah.
The next 60 days will likely dictate the trajectory of this network for the next 60 years.
The board must step out of the shadows and identify itself. They have to communicate a definitive succession plan, whether they choose Rachel, an insider like Arnold Torres, or an external hire.
They just need to be clear.
Exactly. And if they choose Rachel, producing clear, publicly documented conflict of interest policies governing her and Joshua's roles isn't optional, it's a structural necessity.
Absolutely.
Furthermore, a credible board really has to address Jonathan's status. If the founder's final wish truly was restoration, ignoring it just because it's legally or operationally inconvenient is only going to fuel further fracture.
It all circles back to the fundamental difference between a kingdom and a charity. When believers send their hard-earned money to a global ministry, they believe they're investing in a spiritual mission, right? They believe they're funding a public good. But when an organization's entire governance structure becomes completely dependent on bloodlines, marriages, and who happen to have bedside access in the final hours, a critical question emerges for you to mull over.
It really does.
At what point does a global ministry cease to be a charity and simply become a publicly funded royal court? Think about that as this succession crisis unfolds. We will see you next time on The Deep Dive.